There are places in America where entire cities once stood. Streets, schools, banks, churches, thousands of people living ordinary lives. And then something happened. Not a slow decline, not a gradual emptying, something specific. Something that changed everything in a season, a year, a single decision made by a man in an office 1,000 miles away. These are 12 ghost towns in America you're not supposed to know about. And number 1 is a town that the government erased so completely that it scrubbed the name from every official map. Number 12, Fulton, Kentucky. Most people driving through western Kentucky today have no idea they're passing through what was supposed to be one of the great railroad cities of the American South. Fulton sits on the Tennessee border. In the 1880s, it was the most important railroad junction between Chicago and New Orleans. Every Illinois Central train running north to south passed through here. The town built itself entirely around that fact. Hotels for traveling businessmen, warehouses stacked with goods in transit. A population that swelled every time the trains ran, which was constantly. At its peak, Fulton had over 4,000 people and processed more railroad freight than cities 10 times its size. Then diesel replaced steam. Then the interstate replaced the rail freight economy. Then the Illinois Central restructured its routes. One by one, the reasons Fulton existed were removed like supports pulled from under a building. The population today is under 2,000 and falling every census. The Grand Railroad hotels are gone. The warehouses are empty or collapsed. The tracks still run through town, but the trains don't stop anymore. They never stop. They pass through at full speed the way they once defined this place and now define its absence. Number 11, Kosmosdale, Kentucky. This one barely exists in any record, which is exactly why it matters. Kosmosdale was a company town built along the Ohio River southwest of Louisville. The Universal Atlas Cement Company constructed it in 1907. Not just a factory, but an entire self-contained world. Housing for workers, a company store, a church, a school, a post office. Everything a family needed provided by the company for the price of your labor and your loyalty. At its peak, roughly 600 people lived in Kosmosdale. The cement plant ran 24 hours a day. The town existed to serve it. When the plant automated in the 1970s and required fewer workers, the company began quietly dismantling what it had built. Houses were sold off or demolished. The store closed. Families left. The company town that had been constructed deliberately, building by building, was deconstructed the same way. What remains today is a working cement plant, still operating, still producing, surrounded by the ghost of a community that was built to support it. A few structures, some foundations, a name on old maps that most Kentuckians have never heard. The plant outlived the town. The machine outlived the people who served it. Number 10, Estero, Florida. In 1894, a man named Cyrus Teed arrived in southwest Florida with a theory that would have gotten him laughed out of any university in the country. He believed the earth was hollow, that we lived on the inside of a sphere, that the sun, moon, and stars were all contained within the shell. He called his theory Korashanity, named it after himself, and convinced several hundred people to follow him to the subtropical wilderness of Lee County, Florida, to build a utopian community based on this belief. They built it from the raw jungle. They cleared land and constructed a printing house, a bakery, a general store, a concert hall, a boat works, a sawmill, and an art hall. The settlement at its height had around 250 members living and working communally. They published their own newspaper. They conducted scientific experiments to prove the earth was hollow. They planted botanical gardens that still exist today. Teed died in 1908. His followers waited for him to resurrect. He did not. The community, which had practiced celibacy as a religious requirement and therefore could not replenish itself through new births, began aging out. By 1940, only a handful of elderly members remained. The last surviving member deeded the property to the state of Florida in 1961. The buildings are still there. The botanical gardens are maintained. You can walk through the printing house, the art hall, the bakery of a community built around a cosmological theory that was completely wrong in every detail. 250 people built a world on a belief, and the world outlasted the belief and the people by over 60 years. Number 9. Moonville, Ohio. This one is barely a town. It was barely a town when it existed. Moonville in Vinton County, Ohio was never more than a few dozen people, a small settlement that grew up around a coal mine and a stop on the Marietta and Cincinnati Railroad in the 1850s. It had a post office for a few years, a handful of homes, a general store, a tunnel cut through the hillside for the railroad line. The mines ran thin. The post office closed in 1878. The last resident left sometime around 1947. Within a few years, Moonville had vanished so completely that the land showed almost no trace of it, except the tunnel. The railroad tunnel cut into the hillside is still there, 195 feet long, brick-lined, dark in the middle of the day. The tracks are gone, but the tunnel remains, and it has accumulated more legend per square foot than almost any structure in Ohio. A brakeman named Cy was allegedly struck and killed by a train near the tunnel in 1880. Locals have reported seeing a swinging lantern light moving through the tunnel at night for over 140 years. No source, no explanation, just a light moving at brakeman height, appearing and vanishing. Nobody lives near Moonville now. The road to reach it requires a hike. But the tunnel gets visitors every week, people who come specifically to stand in 195 feet of dark and wait for a light that has no origin. Some of them see it, some of them don't. All of them come back. Number 8. Kennett, California. Subscribe right now if this is what you watch for. A new story every single week in the mountains of Shasta County, California, above what is now Shasta Lake. There is a town that was drowned on purpose, but not before the government made the residents move their dead. Kennett was a copper smelting town built in 1900 by the Mammoth Copper Mining Company. It grew fast. At its peak, it had 3,000 people, a 2-story hotel, a school, a hospital, saloons, and all the infrastructure of a working industrial city. The copper smelters ran day and night. The smoke was so heavy with sulfur dioxide that it stripped the vegetation from the surrounding hills for miles. When the federal government announced Shasta Dam in the 1930s, Kennett was directly in the path of the rising reservoir. Residents had time to prepare, but not enough time to feel ready. Before the town went under, the government required that every cemetery be relocated. Every grave had to be exhumed. Every body identified, if possible, reburied on higher ground. Workers spent months opening graves in the Kennett Cemetery, moving the remains of people who had died, building a town that was about to be erased. The town went under in 1944. Today, Kennett sits beneath Shasta Lake, somewhere between 100 and 400 feet below the surface, depending on the water level. In severe drought years, the tops of the old smelter stacks have broken the surface. Old stone foundations become visible on the hillside, a town where every dead person was moved so the living ones could leave. And still it surfaces, offering up its bones when the water gets low enough. Number 7. Gilman, Colorado. There is a town in the Eagle River Valley of Colorado sitting on a cliff 300 feet above the river, and you cannot go there. Not because it's too far, it's visible from the highway. You can see the buildings from Interstate 70. Houses, commercial structures, an ore processing facility, all still standing on the edge of a mesa. Perfectly intact. Permanently locked. Gilman was a zinc and silver mining town that operated from 1886 through 1984. At its peak, it had around 500 residents. The Eagle mine beneath it produced enormous quantities of zinc, lead, copper, silver, and gold. The town operated as a company community, owned entirely by the mining company, which meant when the mine closed in 1984, everything closed. The EPA arrived shortly after and found what the mining had left behind. Heavy metals had leached through the soil into the Eagle River below. The groundwater beneath the mesa was contaminated. Gilman was designated a Superfund site, and the fence went up. The buildings were never demolished. The company town that was sealed the day the mine closed has been sitting sealed ever since. houses with furniture still inside, a school with books still on shelves. Everything preserved in a state of 1984, visible from the highway, completely unreachable. You can see it. You cannot enter it. The EPA hasn't finished the cleanup. There is no timeline for when the fence comes down. A town frozen on the day it ended, displayed like something behind glass, and nobody is sure what to do with it. Number 6. Thurmond, West Virginia. At the start of the 20th century, Thurmond was the most profitable railroad town in the entire state of West Virginia. It had more banking deposits per capita than anywhere in the region. Its hotels ran 24 hours a day because the trains never stopped. A poker game allegedly ran continuously in one hotel for 14 years without a single break. The New River Gorge made it happen. Coal came out of the surrounding mountains by the millions of tons, and all of it moved through Thurmond on the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway. The town that had no road access, you could only arrive by train, became one of the economic centers of Appalachia. When the coal economy shifted and truck transport replaced rail freight, Thurmond lost its reason to exist. The hotels closed, the banks closed. Businesses followed the money out of the gorge. Today, the permanent population of Thurmond is 5 people. 5. One of the most economically dominant railroad towns in West Virginia history now has 5 residents. The depot is still there, maintained by the National Park Service. The bank building still stands. The hotel where the 14-year poker game allegedly ran is still standing, empty, windows intact. And the New River still moves through the gorge below, the same river that made all of it possible, indifferent to everything that happened on its banks. Number 5. Salt Lake, Texas. Most people have never heard of a Texas city that was supposed to rival Galveston. In the 1880s, a group of investors identified a site on the Gulf Coast and began developing what they planned to be a major port city. They platted streets, sold lots, built infrastructure, and produced promotional materials describing Salt Lake as the future commercial capital of the Texas coast. The hurricane of 1886 ended the conversation. The storm that struck the Texas Gulf Coast in August 1886 was among the most powerful to hit the region in the 19th century. Salt Lake took a direct hit. The storm surge submerged the entire development. Everything the investors had built was either destroyed or buried under sediment. They did not rebuild. The money moved to Galveston instead, which ironically would face its own catastrophic hurricane in 1900. Salt Lake today is not a ruin. It is an absence. The lots that were surveyed and sold are underwater or under marsh grass. The streets that were platted exist only on old maps. There are no foundations to find because the hurricane that ended the town scattered everything it built. A city that was sold on paper, built in wood, and removed by wind and water before it ever had a chance to become what it was promised to be. Number 4. Bodie, California. Bodie is the one that tourists visit, the one with the state park designation, the one with the parking lot. But most people who visit Bodie don't know what actually happened there. They see the preserved buildings and think preserved means peaceful. It does not. Gold was discovered at Bodie in 1859. By 1879, the population had reached 10,000. The Standard Mine alone was producing millions of dollars in gold annually. Bodie had 65 saloons, multiple competing newspapers, a red light district that operated openly, gambling houses that ran without pause. It also had, by multiple contemporary accounts, the highest per capita murder rate of any town in the American West. On a good week, 2 or 3 men died violently. A bad week was worse. One local newspaper ran a column called "Bad Man from Bodie." Another reported on the daily gunfights with the detachment of a weather report. A minister who arrived to establish a church wrote home describing Bodie as a sea of sin, lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The gold ran out. The population collapsed. By 1920, fewer than 120 people remained. A fire in 1932 destroyed much of what was left. The state of California acquired the ruins and made a policy decision. Arrested decay. Nothing would be restored, nothing demolished. Everything would be maintained in exactly the state it was found, preserved at the moment of abandonment. You can walk through Bodie today and see a medicine bottle still sitting on a shelf from 1915, a child's shoe in the corner of a room, a calendar on a wall showing a month from a century ago, a town that was once the most violent place in the American West, standing perfectly still, exactly as it fell. Number 3. Glenrio, New Mexico, Texas. Glenrio sits exactly on the state line between New Mexico and Texas. Half the town is in one state, half is in the other. That geography defined its entire existence and its entire collapse. Glenrio grew up along Route 66 in the 1930s as a gas, food, and rest stop for travelers crossing the high plains. The town was clever about its location. When Texas had stricter liquor laws, the bars operated on the New Mexico side. When New Mexico raised its gasoline tax, the gas stations moved to the Texas side. The state line was a business tool deployed depending on which side was more profitable that year. At its peak, Glenrio had a few hundred people, a motel, a diner, a gas station, a bar, and enough of a community to sustain itself on the river of Route 66 traffic. In 1975, Interstate 40 bypassed Glenrio entirely. The highway that replaced Route 66 did not go through the town. It went around it. Within months, the traffic that had sustained Glenrio for 4 decades stopped completely. Today, Glenrio is empty. The diner is still there. The motel is still there. The gas station is still there. The structures are largely intact, sitting in the silence where Route 66 used to run, at a state line that no longer provides any advantage to anyone. A town that survived by being clever about geography, abandoned the day geography stopped mattering. Number 2. Hashima Island, Japan. This one breaks the rules of the list. It is not in America. But no list of the most haunting abandoned places in the world is complete without it. And once you hear what happened here, you'll understand why. Hashima Island, nicknamed Battleship Island for the shape of its silhouette, sits 9 miles off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan. It is 16 acres. At its peak density, it held over 5,000 people. That makes it the most densely populated place in human history. Mitsubishi built an entire city on this tiny island to extract coal from a seam running beneath the ocean floor. They constructed massive concrete apartment blocks, some of the first reinforced concrete buildings ever built in Japan, along with a school, a hospital, a cinema, shops, and everything a sealed city needs. Workers and their families lived their entire lives on 16 acres surrounded by seawater. Children were born there, attended school there, grew up there, never knowing anything else. In 1974, petroleum replaced coal. The mine closed. Mitsubishi gave residents 2 weeks' notice. In 2 weeks, 5,000 people packed everything they could carry and left. The buildings they left behind have been decaying in the salt air ever since. Concrete towers collapsing floor by floor, classrooms with blackboards still showing lessons from 1974, apartments with personal belongings still in them. A city frozen at the moment of a 2-week evacuation. Japan opened it to limited tourism in 2009. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015. You can visit, but you cannot enter the buildings. You stand at the edge and look in, at a city that held more people per square foot than anywhere on Earth, now holding nothing at all. Number 1. Partridge, Kansas. You have never heard of this one. Almost nobody has, which is exactly what was done to it. Partridge, Kansas was a small farming community in Reno County that by 1910 had a school, a grain elevator, several businesses, a post office, and around 300 residents. Modest, functional, the kind of town that built itself around agriculture and expected to continue doing so indefinitely. Then the federal government came for the land. During World War II, the Army Air Forces needed training space. Large, flat, empty space, the kind that exists in abundance across south-central Kansas. They began acquiring land through eminent domain, displacing farms and small communities across the region. Partridge was in the path. Residents received notices, accepted payments, not negotiated prices, but government-assessed values with no counteroffer possible. They left. The buildings were demolished or repurposed for military use. The community that had existed for 50 years was removed and the land converted to an airfield. After the war, the land was not returned. It was transferred, sold, repurposed again. Today it is agricultural land with no visible trace of what it was. There is no marker for Partridge, no historical plaque, no preserved structure. The post office records show it existed. Old maps show where it stood. A handful of families carry the memory of living there. The government did not erase Partridge with malice. It erased it with paperwork, with assessed values and transfer documents and the quiet machinery of wartime acquisition. And when the war ended and the machinery stopped running, what it had consumed was simply gone. Most ghost towns leave ruins, something to stand in, to photograph, to walk through and feel the weight of what was. Partridge left nothing, just the record of what it cost to remove in the silence, where a community used to be. That is the most complete kind of erasure. Not a fire, not a flood, not a mine running dry, just forms filed in triplicate, and a town that ceased to exist because the government needed the space and nobody said no loud enough. 12 towns, 12 different endings. Fire, water, a railroad that bypassed you by 50 miles, a mine that ran dry, a dam that swallowed your streets, a government that needed your land and did not need you on it. Every single one of them was full of people who assumed it would continue, who built schools and planted trees and put down roots in soil that turned out to belong, in the end, to something larger and less interested in them than they were in it. Drop a comment below. What state are you from? Tell me, and I'll find the ghost town near you that nobody is talking about and make it the next video. Subscribe. New story every single week.